heard of it, or you've seen it in the movies or on TV, or maybe caught a glimpse of it flying into Charlotte Douglas International Airport. It's the iconic, mighty Air Force One, best known as the president's plane, but it may soon be replaced by a free palace in the sky, a $400 million jumbo jet, one of the biggest foreign gifts ever given to the U.S. And I just want to thank you for streaming with us here on Queen City News Plus. I'm Alicia Barnes, and I'm joined here by Chief Transportation Correspondent Pilot May-Kay Beeler, and also our Chief Legal Analyst, Clive Rhodes. You guys, we have a lot to discuss with this, May-Kay, but I want to start with you. Let's talk about the facts with this plane. Do we need a new Air Force One?
Well, it depends on who you ask. So we have two Air Force Ones, 35 years old. So they are airworthy. However, they're aging. So back during President Trump's first term, he decided, we would like to upgrade this maturing fleet. So he got together with officials and paid Boeing Aircraft Company nearly $4 billion to produce two new Air Force Ones. But Boeing got delayed and sidetracked. They were supposed to be finished last year. No, they're still delayed. So President Trump had his eye on this Royal Qatar 747, a flying palace, and he thought, maybe we should buy that. Discussions about how much to pay for it, according to reports, and the Qatar royal family said, you know what, we're just going to give it to you. It'll be a gift. We'll give it to the United States Defense Department. You can fly it as the interim Air Force One, and then when you leave office, it can go into the presidential library, and according to some media reports, you can fly it for your personal use. So do we need a new Air Force One? I think he wants something shiny and new, bigger and better than what he has. But the fleet right now, even though it's 35 years old, it is airworthy and beautifully maintained by the Air Force.
All right, Khalif, I want to bring you into the conversation a little bit here, too. May-Kay, we're going to get back to the actual plane in a minute, but there are some big concerns here, Khalif. First, when you talk about a lot of people bringing up, is this an ethical issue? Is this, legally in terms of, this is the biggest gift that any president would ever receive? But also, too, the security issues that come to play. Give us your insight on that.
Well, a couple things, Alicia. First of all, this is something that the main question is, can he do it? Is it legal? You got security concerns. You got to sweep this plane. You're going to have all kind of things on this plane. You got confidential, secured conversations that are happening on Air Force Ones. I mean, it's built out where if something happens, the president can communicate with the folks in his inner circle, and they can have conversations that me and you shouldn't be able to hear. So now you're saying a foreign agency, a foreign entity, a foreign government can give you something, and it could be a million different wires on there, and all of them could be listening to the conversations. We had Signal Gate. Now we'll have Plane Gate as an issue that we don't want to have as we go forward. Right. So that's something that I would say first. But before we even walk down that road, can the president accept the gift? And I think the answer is clearly no, that regardless of the size, the founders of our country wanted no president to receive a gift. The emoluments clause is what I would read. No title of nobility should be granted by the president of the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall withhold the consent without the consent of Congress, except any present emolument, office, or title or any kind whatever from any prince, king, or what foreign state. So when you read that, it checks like every box for what this situation is. Yeah, he holds an office of public trust. He's the president. He's in the United States. He is a person. He doesn't have the consent of Congress. It is an emolument, which is anything, a compensation or service. It's given from a foreign state. I mean, literally every box, if you're asking, can he do this, the answer is a resounding no, not even close.
Okay, I'm going to just push back a little bit on that, because you have people on the other side who say, why shouldn't I receive this gift? And you also have to think, too, there's people who are smarter than us, Khalif, that are thinking about the security issues. What are we missing? What are we not seeing?
Well, those folks that are smarter than me, I'd recommend they read the Constitution again. I mean, it's pretty clear. This doesn't take a rocket scientist nor a legal scholar. The standard for this is the grandmother test. If I explain this to my grandma, does this look like a gift? Does it sound like a gift? Okay, then it's probably a gift. But even if we went past that, like I would tell my students when I taught at the law school, like the plain reading of the language is the clearest indication of what they intended. It clearly says cannot accept any gift from any foreign entity whatsoever. I don't think there's any misunderstanding. Now, sometimes you have folks that want to push the envelope in an attempt to get things that they're asking to get and work around what the Constitution says. Now, that's different. But if you're asking legally, can they do that? Absolutely not. There's no chance. The Trump administration tried this before. In his first administration, he was sued multiple times. The first one was Blumenthal v. Trump. The second one was Cruz v. Trump.
Mm.
Both of them were opportunities for him attempting to go around the Monuments Clause. The first one, I think, was off base, where they said, look, you're telling me because Trump has a connection to the Trump hotels that when foreign folks stay there, this is using the Monuments Clause. I think that's a far stretch and a mischaracterization of what was happening there. And the court said the exact same thing. But in the second one, you have members of Congress, Blumenthal, saying, hey, like 200 plus members of Congress saying, President, you can't do this. So for sure, I would think it would take a really, really weird reading of the Constitution to get to legality of being able to do this.
All right, Khalif, I have more questions for you, but I want to bring McKay into this conversation because we get back to this plane. It is luxury. It is gorgeous. There's a lot of bells and whistles on it. But one of the things that it doesn't have, from what I understand, is a whole medical part that Air Force One does have. So let's talk about what you can tell us that Air Force One has when we talk about the security issues and our president having to be able to be in the air for lengthy amount of times that maybe this vessel wouldn't have. Explain that to us.
Oh, there's a whole configuration that has to be changed, a lot of retrofitting. So the airplane is valued apparently at $400 million. However, it is not presidential ready. It needs to be torn apart. It needs to be added not only a medical facility and bedrooms and places to eat and bathrooms and conference rooms. That's nothing compared to what it has to undergo to be self-defense worthy, to have missiles, to have certain communications, and the most important thing, in-flight refueling. So the president's plane, if there's an emergency, a nuclear war, he can stay airborne for as long as they need to. They have plenty of pilots on board. They can refuel in the air. So, this is really, it's a nuclear bunker. It's going to be able to survive nuclear explosions, undergo electronic protection, hacking protection, anti-missile defense systems. Can you imagine how much all that's going to cost? So the president has been quoted as saying, I'd be stupid not to accept this gift. It's a free gift. Yes, it's a gift, but it needs to be retrofitted, and that can cost millions of dollars and take quite a long period of time. In the meantime, Boeing has been working on these other two, retrofitting. They don't make 747s anymore. Retrofitting two special 747s hopefully will be done within the next 2 years. But officials are hoping they can speed it up. As we all know, Boeing has had issues.
And we also know that with the Trump administration, there's a lot of things that are unprecedented. I want to be able to bring McKay and Khalif into this part of the conversation because I want you both to chime in, all three together, about your thoughts when it happens, when the president receives this gift. Khalif.
I mean, what I could tell you is I would wholeheartedly agree that this is something that the Trump administration is seeking to do. He's mentioned a number of times that I would be stupid to not accept a gift like this. I could be a stupid person and say, no, we don't want a free and very expensive airplane. So he is looking at it from the gift and, you don't want to reject a gift. That's great. But I'm looking at it from the founders, our founders that drafted our Constitution, specifically Alexander Hamilton. We're not talking about the play. We're actually talking about the person that drafted our Constitution. He said this is something that we should have. That's why it was included in the Constitution. And so there is a way he can do it. He just has to ask for permission. Just like all the other things that he's trying to do through executive order. Most of the things that the president wants to do, yes, my immediate gut reaction and the court's immediate gut reaction is you can't do this. 148 times the courts have told him that what you're attempting to do, you don't have authority to do. This would be exactly like those other chances. But if you want to go to Congress and you want to get congressional authority, which the Constitution says that you can do, then, yeah, by all means, I think this could happen because it says without the consent of Congress. So get the consent of Congress. And then me and you are on the same page. But if we're looking at this same document, we're not reading it the same way for sure.
McKay, can you weigh in?
All right. So, here's the deal. Boeing has already been paid nearly $4 billion to work on these new 747s. That money has been spent. Poor Boeing. They've spent more than that. They're trying to get this done. But anyway, that money has been spent. So we take this free gift. Now the president, our government has to spend millions more to retrofit that foreign plane into an Air Force One. And here we're just desperate to get funds to overhaul our air traffic control system.
I think that's a big piece of it that I think a lot of people are missing.
Because
right, because it's not like this gift is coming without some
Yes.
funds that have to go into it, because just as you mentioned right there, you now have to change this $400
Right. It
million
has to be
thing.
retrofitted. It has to be configured. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of time. Although L3 Harris is a defense contractor, they've already been hired to retrofit it.
Right.
If it goes through. And they say it can be done by the end of this year. Well, we'll see. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of money to do that. People don't think about that. So I said earlier, if someone tells him no, he really digs his heels in and wants it to happen. Is it necessary to have this plane? What is wrong with the 2 Air Force Ones that we have flying right now? Earlier, I said 35 years old. Oh my God, that's just too old. It's not. If they're maintained properly, which they are, the Air Force is taking care of it beautifully. It can fly for many, many, many years. It may not be brand new with new bells and whistles and gold trimming, whatever the president might prefer, but let's just stay with these beautiful airplanes and use them until Boeing is ready, perhaps in 27, to turn it over to the newer 747-8.
And Maykay, I can even say this. Let's be clear. We have to stop normalizing these types of things as if this is the normal conversation. The things that the president is attempting to do most recently with this is like he's attempted to do without this entire second administration, is I have to find ways to get around the defenses of the Constitution. We have 3 co-equal branches of government. And because there's not one dictator and 2 separate lower tiers of government, they have to check and balance each other. But if you're not checking and balancing each other, then you have these types of things where folks start to say, well, he can do it. That's the right thing to do. Well, the right thing to do and what's legal are oftentimes not the exact same thing. I tell my law students that, and I would say in this situation, that's the exact same thing. Yes, it sounds like the right thing to accept a gift, except when that gift has strings attached to it, conditions for it. And that's what we were attempting to avoid, because these folks that were with our founders, they had already been there. They were in England. They were there when kings and monarchs were receiving gifts from foreign entities, and they recognized how negative that was on a society. So what do you want to do? Remove that. Don't have that happen in our country when we have a chance to start from the beginning. So now 200 plus years after that, oh, that doesn't make sense. We shouldn't do that. Well, I think they had a good sense to recognize what could help us as a country.
And just lastly, too, there was also the talk of how this plane would then transfer to President Trump after he's in office.
Yeah, is that legal?
Is that legal of how that we've now heard that could be able to go into, I understand, the Trump library, and then he would have access to it and his family would have access to it?
I think that is probably their way of trying to get around the emoluments clause, which is I'm not giving it to the president. I'm giving it to the Department of Defense. Right. So it's going to the United States as a gift.
Okay.
So now we're not saying that no person, right? This is the United States that's receiving it. And then it's going to have the condition that he can receive it after he leaves. And then he can use it before it goes to his presidential library. I still think a plain reading of this says that you're trying to give this gift to him and circumvent this emoluments clause. And that's what's happening here. So for sure, I think there were smart people, as you mentioned before, in the room, and they're trying to figure out, how do we get around this? Someone in the room was saying, hey, there's this gift out there. But what about this Section 1, Article 9, or Article 1, Section 9? You got to find a way around that. And so you get smart people drafting up ways around it. You'll find a way anywhere you want to go.
Maykay, any final thoughts from you?
It's just going to cost too much. I'm sorry, I'm being conservative. We have 2 beautiful 747s out there that can fly for years and years and years. Boeing is going to finish the 2 brand new ones here within the next 2 years at the latest, maybe sooner with all the pressure. Let's hang on with what we've got. They're safe, they're wonderful, they're the mighty Air Force Ones. Let's fly those. Let's save some money. I think folks that are rallying around President Trump just don't realize how much it's going to cost to retrofit this foreign gift. And the security aspect that Khalif talked about, got to sweep got to tear the whole thing apart to make sure there isn't wiring in there to pick up on conversations or even anything that can endanger our president. I just think we just stick with what we've got, being the conservative pilot that I am.
Khalif, you gave us the analogy about what you would tell your grandmother. I know my parents always taught me all money is good money. So when you look at this, of what we're talking about here, let me get your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't pass the smell test, right? But it doesn't pass the if we're asking, is it a gift? If it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, looks like a duck, it probably is a duck, and this is a gift. If you're trying to categorize it as not a gift, then you're clearly mistaken. I think that's their workaround. But if we're saying it's a gift, it only falls under this clause, then there's really no other way you can accept this unless you're saying I blatantly don't care about what the Constitution says. And if you're saying that, that's okay. And I think the 148 times that the courts have told the Trump administration so far that what you're doing is a violation of our Constitution, this would just be another opportunity for the court to do that until we get maybe the Supreme Court to address these lower inferior courts' decisions. That could be part of the strategy. Hey, attempt to throw as many things up there as you can. And then finally, the Supreme Court will say, lower courts, you can't make nationwide injunctions. But the way I see this, if I had a crystal ball, he accepts to give. Someone files a complaint. A court stops it with an injunction. It works its way through the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Then we'll have to have some teeth and say, look, we got to follow what the rules say. Or they'll say, nope, the president can do what he wants. But we'll have to get to that point time down the road.
Kyle Rose, May-Kay Beeler, thank you so much for your interesting perspectives. And thanks for streaming with us. I'm Alicia Barnes for Queen City News Plus.
If you enjoyed watching this content, be sure to download and watch our full series of Queen City News Plus originals on our app. You can find Queen City News Plus using your streaming devices, including Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, and Apple TV. Just search the name, Queen City News Plus. Your support will help us continue our series. We so much appreciate you, and thank you so much for watching.